So I've been meaning to go through this, and why not do it on video for you guys? This is the Stack Overflow developer survey for this year. So we're going to go through it line by line, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on everything. It might take a while, but this turns out to be a long video. I hope it's worth it. Now, educational attainment. It's interesting. I think the fun thing about this, though, is the big gap between people who are quote unquote learning to code and non professional programmers versus actual professional programmers. And so you're learning to code, you do it in primary, elementary school, whatever. I was learning this in before primary school actually. But it's interesting that we've got this giant group of people in secondary school who are apparently learning to code. Probably because people are being pushed into it now, even if they don't want to, is being made part of the curriculum for schools, I think. So you have a non-professional programmer, and they're typically not being pushed into it. That's interesting. But they're definitely looking into it afterwards. So what I see from that is people are being forced to code and they don't want to, versus the people who actually are not professionals, but they're using it in some other way, and they're doing it because they learned to do it in a school after they became an adult. And then if you're an actual professional developer, you basically learn to do it through your school. So how they learn is interesting too, because a lot of developers will use online resources these days, but we got our start in school. And the big thing for me was books. I didn't have friends or family members. Coding boot camps are just worthless. On the job training is always there. Colleagues are always helpful. But I don't really consider coding boot camps to be worth anything. And these are the 10%, like the bottom 10% in my mind. Um, by age is interesting. Let's see here. So, online resources, the older you get, looks like other online resources are getting a bump there. Yeah, you're more interested in the books and stuff if you're older. Hmm. So it could be possible that somebody who's older might have a bias for books. And what I find interesting about this is that school is being pushed on the younger crowd, but books and physical media is not seen as big of a deal as it is for the older people. So one of the things you have to understand is that all the good stuff's in books. Before Google existed, I used to sit there in the library and I would hang out in front of the card catalog and I would be searching for books, or I would just be wandering the shelves trying to figure out what they already had in stock. If it wasn't that, I would be talking to the librarians and make sure they were my friends so I could actually know what was coming in or make requests, etc. You should be doing the same if you have a library. Become friends to the librarians. And so if you're just learning to code, I mean that's so weird. This is interesting. So online resources, technical documentation, of course, a website that does that is going to want to pimp themselves out a bit. I I don't know. Nobody I know really goes to Stack Overflow anymore because it's full of bots. But it's interesting all the same. Technical documentation is basically where you're going to go. I've seen people use AI to summarize technical documentation a lot more these days. But what I've also noticed is that documentation has gotten poorer, so you have to check the code more. Yeah, look at the actual API documentation or the actual code, check the README. And this, like I said, this is becoming more of a thing where you're just using AI or something to look through the source code itself. So out of the respondents, I don't know. I've got over 35 years of technical experience, but over 25 of that is professional. So I guess I'm part of this 10% here, but I don't know. 50 years, that's either very elite or sus. I don't know what to say about this. Like I don't know anybody personally that has that number of years, but it's weird because I can look at this and I can go, I still have far more experience than a very large chunk of, I mean, damn, yeah, that's 50, 60, 70, damn, yeah. And so basically 80% of the industry, I have more experience than. I feel old. And oh man, I have more experience than the average person in the UK, the USA, Canada, Netherlands, Germany, France, Brazil, Poland, Ukraine. So I have many times the experience of the average person in India or Ukraine or Poland. This is why I feel like I'm alone because I have more experience than everybody else. I guess that answers that question. Yeah, a lot of people with only 4 years of experience, I wouldn't consider them to be senior level. 5 to 10, 5 to 9 years, that's when you start becoming more senior. The problem is that you have to be ready and understand that you can't just repeat the same year of experience over and over. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself in a bad position. I've been a senior executive. I've been a manager. I've been a dedicated product manager, a DB admin. I've worked in education. I worked as a program manager at Microsoft Enterprise. That's pretty much all the roles at Microsoft and other places. Software design engineer, been there. Senior in dev role, yeah, worked at Microsoft Research, worked in on embedded hardware. Dev experience, I guess technically working with the APIs and building out APIs for the CLR for .NET probably counts as that. Was basically a SRE at Amazon. I was a scientist at Microsoft Research, cloud infrastructure engineer. I mean, if working on Azure counts and actually helping build it from the ground up counts as a cloud infrastructure engineer, then yeah, I've done that too. Systems administrator, oh gosh, early on in my career, I was a sysadmin on a bunch of Linux systems. I've done back-end development at Microsoft and other places. I've done DevOps specifics. I was a sysdev at Amazon for a little while there. I'm always full stack. It doesn't matter. Data engineers become more and more important as the AI stuff hits marketing or sales. I hated that. Security professional, yep. I've worked red team, blue team, even green team, orange team. Even when I'm just a dev, I'm always on yellow team. Generally trying to be green team as well. Hardware, that's, yeah, I mean, I remember Radio Shack and I was building stuff back then, but it's been a while. Done some mobile development. Blockchain isn't worth it. Yeah, it's a ledger. It's, there's so many problems with the blockchain because of the security issues with it. It's not secure, but it's a great way to scam people. And so that's why I stay away from it. Games, I don't think these are really represented here. Games are great. I love games. I love working on games and developing games. I guess technically academic researcher would be considered some of my roles at Microsoft Research, data science or machine learning specialist. Yeah, I rage against the machine learning all the time. The let's see, developer QA or test. Yeah, I was an SDT at Microsoft for a number of years. I took their hacker training before they stopped giving it. Um, Done some AI stuff in Python recently, mostly running inference, but training data sets and clean up some more data stuff anyway. Business analyst, yeah, I've done that too. Front end, yeah, we all done it. You always have to be a student. So I guess I've done all of these basically. It sucks because I have nowhere else to go. Um, Full stack, I've been there. Back end is where I love to be. Always a student. Always a student. Front end is so political. I stay away from it. Working with the enterprise applications, you always have to do that. Yeah. Mobile, embedded. Yeah, I've gone over this already. This is interesting though because I have a lot of these that are apparently more rare. Manager, academic researcher, like yeah. I mean, I worked in Xbox, so I guess that counts as games, right? Um, Damn, am I really that rare? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm American, so that makes sense. A lot of kids in their 30s just starting to learn to code. Yeah, kids in their early 20s learning to code. Wow. A lot of kids in their 30s. Here I am, 28.5%. Okay. So that's interesting. Like, there's a generation around 7, 8 years ago that just started really hammering into it, which is interesting because that's when the last depression was for tech. Yeah, JavaScript got really popular because it's so accessible. I can see that. One of those things where people have easy access to JavaScript because all it takes is a browser. So they start out there and they learn those skills, and then they never want to leave because it's safe for them. But there's the thing, like looking at all these things, I mean, hell, I've worked in different versions of COBOL, but I don't think I can actually use those skills these days. F sharp, oh yeah, I love to see me some F sharp. I worked on that at Microsoft. I helped ship the 3.1 release of the CLR for it, and I like it as a language. It's got some weird stuff to it, but it's basically the Scala of the .NET platform. Let's see, Zig. Yeah, I like Zig. MicroPython, Elixir, Fortran, Solidity. That's for the Ethereum blockchain. I don't know why you want to use that. Erlang. I like Erlang. Its message passing systems are interesting. Just let them crash, let them restart. Objective C. That's mobile development for iPhone. GD script, which is interesting for game development. Perl, I've done that. Done Scala. Groovy, Visual Basic for applications. It's hilarious. I've done that too. Visual Basic. I mean, a lot of these are ones that I've done. Let's see, Zephyr, Nim, familiar with Crystal, COBOL, OCaml, Prolog, F Sharp, Erlang. Nobody really does Ada. I already talked about Solidity before. Fortran was one of my earlier languages. Zig's basically like C. It's kind of like the Rust of C, basically. And Rust is more like the Rust of C++. Julia, I don't know. I mean, I'm experienced with it, but I don't like it as a language as much. It copies a lot from other things and tries to say it's unique when it's not. Lisp, everybody knows Lisp. Like, it's one of the first ones you learn, and the first languages you create is a Lisp. Um, Pascal, Elixir, yep. Objective C, Perl. I've done Perl. I haven't done Perl in a while, but I think the last time I saw Perl, I was working on a build system. Let's see, Visual Basic, R. Most people do Python nowadays, though, because R is a great statistical language, but it's used for data science. But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of old hat now. Swift, that's iOS, of course. RB is Ruby, of course, it has to be. Assembly, I've done a little bit of assembly. Dart, Lua, that's a great scripting language. It's really embeddable too. It's a register based, last I checked. Kotlin, yeah, kind of JVM. Rust, we already talked about Rust. I like me some Go. It's definitely one of those languages that I enjoy working with. PowerShells, I find it overly verbose and don't really like it very much. Got my start with LAMP back in the day and still write PHP from time to time. C is always going to be there for me. I've written C++ at Microsoft, so yeah. Helped with the CLR and the BCL at Microsoft for C Sharp, so that's definitely on my list. I think the last time I really used Java professionally was probably at Amazon. And yeah, I use Bash and Shell every day. That's just common. TypeScript is what yep. TypeScript. Yeah, I mean that's not really as useful. Transcompilation is slow, so people don't like it, but it does make some of the weird syntax of JavaScript easier. SQL, that's most you should be using an ORM. Python, yeah, with mostly Django, things like that, which you use, CSS, HTML for your templates, and JavaScript. I use some raw JavaScript as I need to. Like this makes sense, but let's see what the difference is. So if you're learning to code, you're probably going to do more JavaScript, right? Oh, interesting. So there more people are branching out into Python and learning all that stuff. But interesting. So people who are just learning to code are just doing HTML, which makes sense. JavaScript, Python makes for sense because there's a lot of flexibility with it though too. It does so much now these days. Java, I think, is something that most people will learn in school anyway. And yeah, you're just really just dealing with, interesting. And then interesting, JavaScript. Interesting. Yep, definitely used all these. I don't really think people should be using MongoDB. I think my biggest issue with MongoDB is the fact that it uses a queue to write architecture for effective, basically just message passing under the hood for the data that needs to be written. And if that operation fails, there's no way to return that error back to the call because at that point it's already returned. And so you can corrupt data at scale. And I absolutely hate that because I've seen it happen. MariaDB is just a fork of MySQL. AWS, yeah, BigQuery, Microsoft Access, Snowflake, yeah, that's really Cassandra, yeah, really nice. A lot of these are really nice. I've used a few of them. Advanced P, RavenDB, Presto, Couchbase, Cockroach, DuckDB, Firebird, Solar, ClickHouse, Neo4j is a graph database, actually. Cassandra is a key value store, technically, but yeah, I guess that makes sense. Snowflake is the hey, here's all the permutations of all your data in the background. Cosmos is very data driven, very event driven. H2 is kind of the same. Superbase, Microsoft Access, BigQuery. That's probably Google BigQuery. And DynamoDB, that's from AWS. I've used that a few times. Oracle's database is basically just a normal SQL server with a bunch of bullshit added to it for enterprise stuff. Because let's face it, Postgres will do it half the time faster, better anyway. It's cheaper too. MariaDB, like I said, is just a fork of MySQL. which is up here. SQLite is actually a really Chad database, and if you don't understand what I'm saying there, you should understand that SQLite is it does some really nice stuff. I know it. You might look at it and go, "Hey, this is a small database. It doesn't do much. It's embedded." But trust me, it does. It is one of those better things. Now, let's see what we got here. Other coders, starting out with the open source stuff. That makes sense. Because some of you get SQL Server licenses. I'm glad that less people are using MongoDB. That is good. Learning to code. MySQL, I remember learning to code with MySQL. Postgres is mostly what's going to be used in production, though. People are going to have access to MySQL Server. That's just not going to happen. And like I said, Postgres is what you're going to show, what you're going to throw on prod. That are MySQL. If you need some of their indexes, yeah, I still don't like seeing MongoDB on this list. I just don't. Okay, this makes sense. I use Amazon for some of my stuff too. I mean, I helped build Azure. Google has their own thing. Let's see. Web services. My guess is that most people are using Amazon, unless you're learning to code, because Google adds those credits and those certificates and wants you to use their system. And then when you're done with that, you go back to Amazon because that's where the jobs actually are. Amazon and Microsoft. I've used Cloudflare, I've used DigitalOcean, Vercel, Heroku, which is basically, Heroku's weird in that you're basically just Git pushing. You're pushing your Git repo to it and it deploys it. But the thing about that is I see that it's kind of dying. Like I've seen a lot of technical debt around that too. And so some of its clones as well have really been kind of meh. So yeah, this is about what I expected. I host everything of myself on Amazon because it's cheaper. Uh, let's see here. Huh. This is interesting. So there's a glut of React and Node.js skills. So if you want to differentiate yourself, branch out because, damn, I think the problem with React is that you basically need Node.js to use it anyway. It's the whole embedded on the server side BS for the front end is just bad design, in my opinion. I don't like it. I prefer to have a separation of concerns. I don't want those concerns to be able to not have to be able to break each other. So, learning to code, Node, React, Express. So they didn't understand that Node.js and React are very different, but React is a UI framework that runs in Node.js. So these numbers are kind of weird. Express is a server stack framework that does middleware and layers to the HTTP stack. Flask is obviously Python. Uh, jQuery is on the front end. So they're mixing these a lot. And Node.js, React query. Yeah, okay. So you React for UI, Node.js because you have to, jQuery because it's simple, and those are like the 20% of people that are getting 80% of the work done, is my opinion. Angular is a mess because they increment it's like every even, I think, is a stable. I can't remember. I've got a book for one of them over there. ASP.NET Core is always, that's fun. That's C Sharp. Express is JavaScript again. As is next. So there's a lot of JavaScript stuff here too. Spring Boot is going to be Java. Flask is going to be Python, as is Django. So yeah, looks like about 20% of the market's Python. That's what I expected. Didn't expect JavaScript to be as high as it is though. AngularJS, Nest.js, Svelte, Blazor. Blazor is going to be .NET though. Translated to WebGPU. Ruby on Rails is its own thing, but the thing about Ruby on Rails is you basically use it to make throwaway projects because you don't want to have to upgrade them. Or at least it was a pain. I've gone through a lot of upgrade projects from like version 3 all the way and then upgrading them to version 7. And those were painful. Let's see here. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I didn't expect Node.js to be so high. Yep, I got a few Raspberry Pis around the house. UGCC, LVM's Clang is used for Rust and other things too. Cargo, which is Rust, obviously. And SVC, that's going to be a compiler on the Windows side for C. And Ninja's a build system. Platform.io, Messen, QMake, these are different versions of. I'd like to see CBP unit represented. It's a testing framework, but huh. They kind of got to mix together. People learning to code are using it on Arduino. They're not using it on the Raspberry Pi. They should be doing it on the Raspberry Pi. Arduino is just kind of, yeah, there you go. People are actually making things and doing stuff for using Raspberry Pis and CMake, which is nice to see. Embedded technologies are always going to use things like make, and if you don't know how to use a make file, I would learn. It's just something you have to learn. So I think they're putting a lot of different things together here. .NET, of course, is this .NET CLR, which is a virtual machine of the .NET framework. NumPy is a Python data science framework, as is Pandas. The .NET framework itself is another version of the CLR, but they all basically has the same execution context. The same code will work on both, as long as it's using the same MSIL version, because the MSIL version is actually the assembly language for .NET. And so let's see here. Spring Framework, that's Java. RabbitMQ is actually an AMP protocol queue, so it's not really interesting. Learn, which is going to be their toolkit for UI. Torch and PyTorch are definitely going to be AI related, as is TensorFlow. Kafka is going to be event driven. PubSub. Flutter is it's I don't know, it's web developed for mobile, but it hasn't really done as well as some would want. OpenCV is going to be for camera video stuff. I've used it in a few scripts, but every time I want to run them, it takes exclusive action on my only camera I have, so I can't record those. But I have a thing that tracks my hands and does things with it. I can paint with my hands and whatnot. I wrote that out. It's actually kind of interesting. React Native, that's basically React again, but it's for like mobile and whatnot. Qt, oh gosh, writing Qt. So Qt is a windowing framework for Linux, and I find it interesting that they're adding it here. OpenGL, that's not even I mean, it's a standard for video processing, but that's, yeah. Electron's the bloated JavaScript framework for making your app. CUDA is an NVIDIA specific thing for mostly for AI nowadays. And of course, Huggy Face is the site that hosts that. Yeah, so this is all, yeah, Curious, Maui, Rough, yeah, just .NET is CLR, Ximian, which is basically the open source version of CLR, GDK, which is another windowing framework for Linux, Tari. Actually, it's basically Electron for Rust, which is interesting. I messed with it a bit. Definitely worked with Hadoop a bit, especially when I was at eBay slash PayPal. The insane size of the data we had to deal with in Hadoop was Dova, DirectX. Yeah, they're mixing up databases and regist and rendering pipelines and everything else. Tidyverse, Roslyn, which is a compiler framework. Oh, Flowjax, MFC, really? Okay. Okay, so let's see what the professional difference is. Other coders just not even doing much. Yeah, so they're just doing pandas and .NET PyTorch. Interesting. Huh, interesting. You see, if you're a professional, you're probably using .NET. Let's see here. Docker, yeah, containerization, npm, which is version control for Node.js. That makes sense. Pip is the version control for Python. Homebrew is version control for pretty much anything, but it's on Mac only. Well, actually, I think they support other platforms now, but Make is the classic Make that we've talked about already, which everybody should know how to use. Vite, really? That much? Kubernetes, yeah, I mean, it's basically containerization, orchestration for Docker. Yarn, which is a build system for TypeScript, and Webpack, basically the same thing. NuGet's the version control for .NET. Maven is a great build system for Java. So this is Visual Studio Solutions. This is Gradle, build system for Java. MS Build is C Sharp, .NET, C++, that sort of thing. Terraform is just GitOps, basically checking a file and you can use that to create your environment. APT, they're probably talking about the package manager. NPM, which is the, yeah, Python NPM. Composer, which is another TypeScript thing, I believe. JavaScript. Chocolatey. Chocolatey is fun for Windows because it's basically the homebrew for Windows. This is what I always thought of it as. Ansible is more GitOps. Pacman's more version control for Linux. Unity 3D, that's a game engine. That's interesting that it even got one on here. So it's Podman, it's a version control for Linux. Godot, which is a game engine for mostly Linux and 2D stuff. It doesn't do 3D stuff very well. Ninja and the build system. Bun, that's the JavaScript runtime. It's a newer one though. Google Test, yeah. Unreal Engine, game engine. Ant is a .NET build system. At least it was for a while. Or actually, that would be NANT. This would be for Java, I believe. And Nix, Dagger, Puppet, all orchestration stuff. And Chef, yeah. It's orchestration, GitOps stuff. Let's see what we got here. So they're deploying in Docker, using npm to deploy a JavaScript-based thing, or pip to deploy a Python-based thing. Probably using Homebrew as part of their set up their dev environment, and Kubernetes for part of the actual deployment because they're probably using Kubernetes to do the actual deployments and just using Docker for running individual services. Interesting. Yeah, I use Visual Studio Code for a lot of things now. I used to use Visual Studio for a lot of things, but nowadays it just doesn't seem right. I personally don't trust anything by IntelliJ. Intelligent ID, JetBrains, I consider them a full-on Russian company, so I just don't use anything they have, and I actively do what I can to remove them from companies because of that. Let's see, Red Studio, RubyMine, all these fun things. Yeah, just parts. Yeah, a lot of these are JetBrains products. I'm not going to give them any screen time. Um, let's see here. Yeah, basically Notepad plus plus. Yeah, I mean I've done that too. See, other coders. They're not professional coders, but other professionals use, yeah, okay. So other coders use Vim more than professional coders. Remember that. And so, yeah, Visual Studio Code is basically the one that you use, honestly. Yeah, everybody uses Jira. It's like 22 years old at this point. Checking in markdown files is always good. I'm actually a fan of. I've got a thing there, but it's LogSeg. It's Influence, Trello, DevOps, Notion, Miro, Obsidian, basically, yeah. Wikis, Asana, ClickUp, Lucid. Let's see, UTrack. No, they don't have it. It's interesting. LogSec is basically a better version of Obsidian. So, huh. Trello, which is for Kanban, Azure DevOps, which is the standard task list, DevOps, Kanban type thing. Markdown file, that's interesting that they would even say that. They're literally just checking in a markdown file. That's interesting. Confluence. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Microsoft Teams because people are learning to code Discord. That's interesting. Slack is often used in professional. Like I've only seen companies use Microsoft Teams when it's free to them and they don't want to pay for Slack. But Slack is always the better option when compared between Teams and Slack. I don't know a single developer that thinks otherwise. And I personally don't like using Microsoft Teams. I actually don't trust it personally. I've seen too many security problems with it. And so I'm biased that way. Uh, Zoom, everybody uses Zoom. Google Meet, basically the same thing. I'm on Discord every day. I don't use WhatsApp at all. I don't even have an account. I do not use it at all. I stay away from it because it is full of scams. And yeah, same with Telegram. I don't use Skype either. Signal messed up my phone. I hated it. Uh, I was big on IRC back in the day. Still kind of am. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So here's the deal. If you want to make something for developers and you do not want to support Windows, you are being a jerk. You are not being elite. You are not being kind. You are not being good. You are not being skilled. You are showing that you have an unhealthy bias and that your output may be harmful. So definitely make sure you support Windows. Because if you don't, that's a problem. I've used Solaris, AEX, BSD, CYG, and which is so this is actually a version of Linux that kind of runs on Windows in its own little thing. But nowadays you get better support through Windows subsystem for Linux, which is what most people use anyway. I can kind of see this as dying off. It's important that it exists, but at the same time, I don't really see it as something that is useful in my daily life. Uh, Android is basically just Linux for mobile with some patches, and it's more locked down. I use Ubuntu in my Windows machine, so maybe there's that too. So this is interesting. AI search. ChatGPT, I don't GitHub Copilot, Gemini, Bing AI, Telecode. I don't really think that's AI. I mean, Telecode is. Did they make it AI now? Used to be just statistical. Here, show you the options, but yeah. So professional developers, other coders. Let's go to other coders. 81%. Learning to code, and then professional developers use it less than other coders. Okay, interesting. You're all using ChatGPT, really? Ugh, you're giving OpenAI all your company's data like that? Like, why would you do that? That doesn't seem secure. Let's see here. Desired, admired. So it looks like the Rust is definitely up there. I don't understand this metric here. What's the difference between desired and admired? Like desired as in I don't use it, but I want to. Admired as in I do use it and I like using it. So people like using Python more than they do JavaScript. That's good. Rust has a weird community sometimes though. Like I like Rust. I use Rust all the time, but Some of the build systems I've encountered are just out of control. And Go C sharp. Yeah, okay, nice, nice, nice. So it looks like a lot of those languages I tend to work with are on the higher end here. I know there are some people who are diehard Rubyists, but I don't know any of them that are actually, yeah. Nobody likes Visual Basic anymore. Nobody uses MATLAB. You use Python now. Oh, nice. Desired 0%. Like nobody wants to work with it. People want to work with Python. Interesting. People like Rust, but they don't necessarily want to work with it, which I think is interesting. Hmm, interesting. JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, really where most of it is. Yeah, Postgres definitely it. Perfect. Don't sleep on SQLite. I think that's important. A lot of people don't know what Neo4j is, so I can see this. RavenDB just is painful to work with, so I can see that number. Yeah, some of these older ones are just like, yeah, nobody wants to work with them because they're out of support or they're just compared to other platforms, they don't really matter. That's what I thought. Amazon, yeah, Amazon and the Google's. Yeah, this basically fits my understanding of the market. Amazon's up there at the top in terms of what people actually want to use. Azure is there second because of its price point. Now, Azure actually gives you much better support if you pay for it than Amazon does, but it's more expensive, and because of that, companies will definitely often not choose it. And Google, of course, is the most expensive out of all those three clouds, and you get okay support, but sometimes they just kind of give you the finger and leave you alone. It's my experience, and so that is interesting. React, Node.js, next. Okay. So React for front end, next for the web call stuff. Maybe Vue if you're not using React. Either way, you're using Node.js, which is the framework and execution framework for dealing with running everything. So this is actually more of a server. I don't know why they should have just factored it out, but oh well. Uh, Express is another one. So Next and Django. Yeah. Well, as people want to work with .NET Core more than they want to work with React. I can see that. I can definitely see that. Because on one side you've got what people want to use and what people actually use, and so yeah, Raspberry Pi, that makes sense. .NET. Okay, so that tells me right there that this is the people that use it. This is the people that want to use it, and yeah, that makes more sense. Interesting. Yeah, Visual Studio Code is just as a great IDE. I don't like IntelliJ, and as somebody who had a lifetime subscription, I got screwed over by them so many times because a command line argument would update or something, and they would refuse to provide support for it unless you paid them several $100s for something that was literally a one line change. And that and some of the BS that I saw with them supporting Russian developers and trying to hide it made me really angry. And so my watching them on GitHub made me just not trust them as a company at all because that's all the things that they did. Jira. Everybody wants to use a Markdown file and not Jira. I love that. Wow. Obsidian is actually bigger than I thought it would be. Logsec is actually Logsec is the one that I enjoy. It's basically Obsidian but better because it's more private, and it doesn't have that stupid "we'll pay." You have to pay to sync. Uh, but we'll go into that later. Slack. Everybody wants to keep on Slack and Discord. Nobody wants to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just nobody likes Zoom. I'm surprised Google Chat is so low. Huh. People like ChatGPT, but they don't like Copilot as much or Gemini. Well, Bing, nobody likes. That's interesting. Yeah, ChatGPT is obviously the big one here. Copilot, I don't use it, so don't know. Okay. So it looks like this is interesting in that there is definitely going to be, yeah. So the big ones here we've already talked about are going to be Python, JavaScript, and SQL. Everything else, HTML, CSS. I still think that you should be learning C sharp, but that's just me. These other languages are older, but they're definitely more robust, and because of that, companies want to keep them around. Yeah, SQLite is a Chad database, and I will never not say that. MySQL was one of the first ones that I started out with. I use Postgres in production more though nowadays. This is interesting. Yeah, Redis is interesting because also it provided the ability to do data storage as well. But Redis kind of got screwed over by the politics and licensing changes and everything too. So its forks are actually doing better now. Amazon, yeah, Google Cloud, yeah, not a big. If you look at this, there's like some people who want to go to Microsoft Azure or whatever, but they always come back. Like I'm looking at this, and it makes more sense to, yeah. I think the numbers we've already talked about is good because AWS is going to be one, Microsoft's a solid two, Google Cloud is the third. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing for me. I see React as mostly just a UI framework, so I'll probably have to look more into it and see what that's about because I already use it for other things, but I'm not really happy with it. I don't like it. So there's that. And that's kind of, I don't know, this is kind of weird because it's used for so many other things. So they've kind of messed with the numbers a bit here. Yeah. Yeah. And they're basically like, it really does feel like they didn't do the deep dive on this data that they should have, or they would know what Roslyn is and how it's connected to .NET. And so saying that people who've used Roslyn want to use .NET or work with .NET want to work with Roslyn, depending on the side of that you're looking at, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I feel like they did not do their data due diligence. Yeah, I use Visual Studio Code for everything nowadays. I don't even use anything else. Nano is not an IDE. That's hilarious that they got added that there, but it's not an IDE. It's a text editor. Vim is not an IDE. It's a text editor. Oh well. I mean, it can become an IDE if you add enough plugins and stuff, but it's just I don't know. The number of people just using a plain old Markdown file is gets to me. Like Jira's been around for 22 years. I expected it here. Trello's great. Wikis are great. I mean, they always get out of date, but oh well. Obsidian, I mean, they should have added the other options, but oh well. How many of you are actually on Discord for your work, though? That's the thing. I can see Slack and I can see Teams and Google Meet, but not Discord for work. Like, I have yet to encounter a company that does that, at least officially. So I don't like these numbers because they're so damn low. This is actually the biggest problem with these kind of things. Uh, they mess with the numbers. These basically pay twice what is here. And so when I see these things, I know the number's been messed with. I've seen Erlang rolls for 250. I've seen Elixir and Clojure rolls for 2 something. I've seen Ruby rolls for 160. I mean, nobody, I just, I don't believe that these are the correct numbers. And what I really hate about this is that it makes me feel like maybe they're also using the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, which we know is capped at $115 an hour, and because of that, it is not accurate. It's just BS. The direction might be useful to understand, but the actual numbers themselves are BS, and they're not valid. I just don't see them as valid at all. Everybody's taking an L. Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I think AI tools have a place if you're sufficiently senior and you can deal with the quality control issues that they introduce. But they're it's like rolling the dice. Yeah, yeah. If you know what you're doing, you can really get a lot of work done. But I find that the thinking needed to figure out the correct prompt is actually the most valuable part of that. The critical thinking skills are what you need, not necessarily having the computer bang out the code for you. Because if you can create the best prompt for it, then you've already solved the problem, basically. Accuracy in coding can be problematic with AI tools, and they hallucinate like crap. I don't trust them at all. As a professional, we should not trust them at all. We should consider them to be a junior developer who doesn't know what they're doing, and we should audit every line of code that we get from AI. We should not just copy and paste it into the thing and expect it to work. And when we do that, when we do copy and paste, it should be on a project that's already checked in so we can do the diff, look at the diff, change the diff, and make sure it's correct. Yeah, I don't. I don't see it as handling complex tasks. I see it as grunt work that's automated. Interested in using, not interested in using. Yeah, I mean, interesting. Definitely two sides of this. I I have a ChatGPT account, and I'll use it for random things, and I'll even ask it for code snippets from time to time. But what I've noticed is that it's only as valuable as the work that I'm willing to put in. And so, as a software development engineer who's more senior, I have to put in a good prompt for it to give me back something that I would consider high quality. And that in itself is something that a lot of devs just won't have the skills or knowledge to do. And so they're going to get back crap code. So the professionals are pushing back against the integration. That's interesting. I think that's right. AI tools a threat to your job? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I think noob coders are angry and think it's a threat to their job because they lack the skill, and the AI is pumping out really mid or terrible code, and yet it's still better quality than what they can create. So they feel threatened by it. Yeah, misinformation and missing incorrect stuff. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. And you can't trust the output ever. They lack context on the right policies, proper training. Yeah, yeah, I don't really see it as useful. It's interesting. That's more than I expected that are not employed full time. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, high remote is over a third of the sample size, and that's interesting. Interesting. So 5,000 to 9,000 employees, and almost 20% of those are from the bigger companies there. So basically, yeah, that's actually a big deal. Like there's a big chunk there at the bigger companies. Yeah, these numbers are bullshit. Oh, I see. So they're using that explains the quality of the code. They're not paying them enough for them to actually try. Um, I say that, and let's just go back to this because I said it. So let me own it. My experience with offshore developers based in India is that they don't know crap. And quite frankly, the code that I've seen checked in from those teams uh, made me ashamed for their families because it was so bad. And it was something where most of the teams that I worked on would literally have to rewrite every single line of code because it was so bad. They were a net negative to the team. and they actively seem to go out of their way to screw us over with their bad architectural decisions and terrible, shitty code quality and lack of tests. Because of that, I have a slight bias against developers that are based in India. I have not seen high quality from them. Yes, I am fully aware that there are people in India who know what they're doing and are very intelligent and can write high quality code. However, I have not worked with one. I'm open to, though, just to be clear. I just haven't seen an example of high code quality from somebody in India. And I look at this and I go, well, no wonder you're not paying them anything. They have no motivation to learn. They have no motivation to try to do better because you're not treating them like a real engineer and paying them what they're worth if they're good. So you're getting a bunch of the what I'm going to call the try hard kids who don't know what they're doing, who are staying in it because they have no other choice, because it helps their caste or it helps them marry the woman they love or whatever because they can get a caste upgrade by being a software engineer. Um, I've done all these things. I don't believe that these numbers are real. They're too low. I just can't be right. This is just worthless because the numbers don't make sense. The numbers don't add up to the real numbers I've seen in the industry. So it's just word salad to me. I don't trust it at all. Let's see here. Great deal of influence, little no influence. So yellow is great influence. Yeah, I mean, engineering manager, you're going to have more influence, but honestly, it's about making sure the team can actually use it too. You can't use technology that you're not hired for. Like if you don't have a team that can use that technology, then it doesn't matter what you as an engineering manager want because your team can't understand it. They either don't want to learn it or they're not going to learn it, and so you have to take that into account. You have to think about your current technical stack as well and any technical debt that exists. You can't use a language that nobody on the team wants to use. Mm, interesting. A lot more buying than I expected, but buy and build, a little bit of mix. Yeah, that makes more sense. I wouldn't. I wouldn't start a free trial. I just use open source stuff. Interesting. So one of the things I want to call out here is the fact that asking developers you know or work with is a huge thing here. If a dev that you trust knows about a technology and they would trust it in their projects, that's how it ends up getting used on production. And so if you are not using, how can I put this? If the devs around you are not using these things in their own projects, then why would you use them? Because it hasn't been battle tested. Nobody's gone in before you and figured out the bugs and reported them or made sure it works, right? So why would you trust it on production? Reputation of quality is going to be important. APIs is good, but connected to open source community is good. Yeah. coding outside of work. I mean, you have to be doing your own projects. If you're not going to do that, then only 10%. Oh gosh. Let's see here. Okay, so they're trying to pimp themselves by making themselves look like professionals use their website more than they do. Got it. I have an account of Stack Overflow. I'll visit it from time to time, but it has become an absolute cesspool of AI chatbots upvoting each other, and as a result, I trust that a lot less. Yeah, quickly finding solutions, mostly finding solutions linked from a Google search or some other search. Honestly, if I'm looking for something, or I'm looking for something very specific that has historical significance, definitely not. I'd be one of those 30%, 13.9% to be honest. I mean, I may have a lot of karma or whatever you call it on this website, but I don't really use the site much. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who's been a people manager, but also an individual contributor, I think that's probably in line because you've got around 5 people, 4 people, 4 to 5 people, some even, yeah, for every manager. So that makes sense. People managers should not be somebody with only 4 years of experience or 1 to 4 years of experience. That that just seems wrong. Those people are in titles above their experience level. What I find interesting about this is that there are more with 5 to 10, 9 years of experience than there are 1 to 4 years. Like there's an actual downtrend being created there. We had the big, if you look at this, it's big growth, and then now we've got small decline. At the same time, we've got the decline there as well. So that's interesting. But once again, I am, one of those under 5% because I do both. And I guess, yeah. Yeah, I don't wait for answers. I go get the answer. I can't wait for other people. I'm gonna get a list of issues to deal with, and I'm gonna iterate through them as fast as I can so I get the work done. If knowledge is siloed, that's a defect. You go talk to your team about that. If you find yourself answering questions repeatedly, add it to the wiki and then direct people to the wiki when they ask you again. Yeah. Yeah. Knowledge silos how often happen because people are trying to hide information. They don't want you to know because they're afraid of being replaced. Let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, you shouldn't be spending a large amount of time looking for answers or solutions. You should know enough to be able to whip it out of your head. And honestly, an hour a day, I guess, is fine, but that's I don't know. That seems like a lot to me. You shouldn't be answering questions as much as you should be teaching or documenting so that people don't have to ask you. They can go look at the web page that you've created in the MD file or whatever. So managers are basically answering questions twice as much as the ICs, which makes sense. But still a lot of time there. You'd be mentoring, yeah. You should be doing everything you can to make sure your team, as long as it's not the same question over and over, that would be a problem. Yeah, continuous delivery is the big one there. You should be doing DevOps, automated services, testing, microservices, knowledge sharing. Yes, all those good fun things. Cloud only, you should not be doing on-prem. That's stupid. Don't do that. Public search engines can do it, but coworkers are useful. AI-powered search is interesting here. Slack search, dev portal. Huh, interesting. Amount of technical debt. Yeah, because companies have refused to hire for the last couple of years, and they've laid off a lot of people. So all those people that used to take care of things don't do it anymore. So we've got increasing debt, and it's going to pop soon. I actually see this as one of the bigger risks to every single tech company right now is the amount of tech debt is going to pop. It's going to create some unknown, sudden change that is going to require a lot of technical debt mitigation, which is going to be very costly in terms of time and people. And when they start hiring again, they can start working on that, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse. It's going to happen at the speed of updates. Yeah, a lot of this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not really part of software if you're in insurance. Like, I don't get that, but okay. Most people are not happy at their work. People are complacent. A minimum of 20% is happy at work. That's dangerous when we have non-competes being banned nationwide as September 4th. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, interesting. So they want better code quality. They want to learn. People want to work in open source software. That's good. That's good. That's good. Kind of a long one, honestly. I feel like it was kind of long, too long. Uh, Probably very easy. Yeah. So there you have it. Over an hour to go through that whole damn thing. And let's see. If you're still with me, some of the big thoughts that I have are that I've noticed that JavaScript definitely did a big W, but there's more of them. And so it looked like rates were actually going down because of that. If your dream of being paid lots of money, it looks like maybe you shouldn't get into tech at all if that's your dream. And if that's why you're getting into tech, then you shouldn't have been in tech in the first place anyway. But the fact is, things are changing, and I'm going to have to hit my head against more React stuff. I think I stay away from it if I can. I prefer Bootstrap. I prefer anything except React. I've seen React play havoc with screen readers and be a real pain in the butt for accessibility, which is a legal compliance issue. But that explains a lot. But yeah, I'm gonna think about this. I think there's more for me to ponder. Have a good night.